Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining me today, he's an actor, producer, writer, editor, real estate developer, and a TV show host best known for the iconic game show Legends of the Hidden Temple. It's Kirk Fogg. How are you doing today, Kirk?
Good. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to talk about your Rise of the Challenge and learning more about your experience. So we like to go right to the beginning and talk about where are you from and what were you involved in growing up?
I was your typical kind of, we had two parents working. So I was kind of a latchkey kid, except I was the third in the chain. So I was kind of taken care of by my sister and my brother. But I grew up in the TV generation, and I was just I was kind of a crazy kid. I couldn't hold still. I went to school. I loved school, but I didn't really like sitting in my seat. So I always laugh about it because I think I have like 17 report cards, and the teachers always write a note on the back, and it always says first semester, Kirk has trouble sitting in a seat. That'd be like everybody else gets like beautiful prose. Kirk's had trouble sitting in a seat. Second semester would be, Kirk seems to be sitting in a seat more. And then I go year two, So I was kind of a hyper kid. I think probably because I ate too much sugar cereal, and I liked all of them. And I used to love going to the grocery store with my mom, and she would, I would be in charge of cereal. So I would spend like an hour in the cereal aisle looking for the perfect cereals for our family. And it was sort of a cross between what was the best flavor and what offered the best prize, because back then they really gave out prizes. So I was really analyzing each of the boxes, and I'd come home with 6 or 7 boxes of cereal.
So what was that cereal that had the best prize and the best flavor?
Probably Sugar Smacks. They're called Golden Smacks or something like that. Golden Crisp. I forget that, but they were called Sugar Smacks, and they were great. The best prize ever was on the back. They had an album, like a record, and you had to cut it out and you could play it on your record player. And it was sugar, oh, honey, and I love that.
Just imagine what like all the technology they have today, how they could take that concept back then and what they could do with it now.
And they don't do anything with it now. They don't. You don't find that I guess they just got a conscience in the cereal department. So.
Well, you go now into the cereal aisle, and it's just a whole aisle, and you're like, what do I pick? And usually the ones when I was younger, Frosted Flakes was my favorite.
Well, yeah, Frosted Flakes standard, gold honeycombs standard, yep. Captain Crunch standard, all of those. Oh, Cocoa Crisps.
Oh, now you're making me hungry now. When you were growing up, did you have anyone that you were inspired by or that you looked up to?
Yeah, so not again, because I haven't talked about this, but I've always played a little older or younger than I am. So I have a lot of heroes that are quite seemingly out of my age range. Possibly, maybe not now, maybe no, that's right on. I loved comedians. I loved Jerry Lewis. I love Jerry Lewis. So I'd watch anything with a Jerry Lewis movie. I like Jack Lemmon. He was one of my favorites. And I loved a lot of sporting athletes. I liked the Chicago Cubs. I grew up as a young kid. And I was from LA. And my brother got me into the Chicago Cubs. He told me the other day, and I'd forgotten it. He said, yeah, we were at that grocery store. And while you weren't in the cereal department, you were over in the magazine area. And I read you an article about this guy named Billy Williams, who was a great Hall of Famer for the Chicago Cubs. And so I started following him, and then I started following the Cubs. The first year I followed them was in 1969. I thought, this is the greatest team ever. And that was the greatest choke by the Chicago Cubs until they won the World Series back in, 2016? Was it 16, 17?
I mean, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I don't pay attention to the Cubs at all. I will say that the Cardinals-Cubs rivalry is a great rivalry. If you go to the games.
Well, I wore a Cardinal hat because my kid was on the Cardinals in Little League, so it was really hard.
Oh, wow. when you were growing up, did you have any passions? Because you talked about you weren't like into school, but
yeah, I liked art. I liked art. I could get lost in doing artwork. I really liked that a lot. I just didn't, I was so, I don't know, I was just so hyper, and I was so, I was always on, I think. I was always on, and I was always like trying to be funny, and I was always like getting in trouble in class for that mostly. But so I was, my passion was that. And then finally, I really wanted to be in TV when I was a little kid. I mean, I just loved TV. I was a TV addict. So I watched all the shows. I knew all the commercials. I knew all the jingles. And so that was my passion. But then my brother thought that it wasn't a very practical idea to be an actor when he was like, 10, telling me, when I was 7. And he goes, so I really got into sports. And so that's where I really found my passion, because I really became pretty good at sports and football and stuff like that. And I sort of broke through, and I was always I was always really good in football and baseball. And then when I got into high school, I was very undersized, and I played defensive line. And it was really one of the biggest challenges, and I tell my kids this now, but I go, it was really one of my first big challenges that I had was, I was 150 pounds, I was 5'8", and I wanted to play defensive lineman, because that's why I played all through my junior All-American program, my Pop Warner program, but they had weight limits, so I was always at the top of my weight. But when I got into high school, suddenly I was going against guys who were over 200 pounds. And I had no shot. So it's funny, my sophomore year, I went from for defensive lineman, I said, how about wide receiver? Because I was fast, and I tried wide receiver. But the problem was, the guy who was our wide receiver, he was a sophomore, and he was already a starting varsity and parade All-American in nationwide as a wide receiver. And I'm like, I'm never going to break the wide receiver position. So I decided to go back to defensive lineman my last game of the year, and I had 2 sacks. And I was like, wow, I can do this against big guys. And the next year I told the coaches I want to be a nose guard, and they put me at they had a depth chart up in the locker room, little tabs. And I was number 5 out of 5 people who wanted to be defensive lineman. And I worked my way up that depth chart until the day before our first varsity football game. I never gave up. My dad was right there with, trying to get me to break through. And finally, the night or 2 nights before our first varsity football game, the coach yelled at me and didn't yell at me, but he yelled across the field for me to come over, and he said, get in the game, or get in the scrimmage. He goes, you're starting Friday night. Wow. So it's like the biggest, that was such a huge event for me, because, it was like really coming from nothing, like being in the bottom and really thinking there was no hope, but really just never giving up.
I think a lot of people can relate to that story, where size definitely plays a part in sports. Like some people, if they're not tall enough to play in basketball in a center, or I don't know, basketball positions and stuff, point guard, that they kind of go back and think, okay, now I can't do this. And they kind of lose that self-confidence in a way, where I've experienced that, where people look at me and they don't think I'm an athlete, but I kind of call myself a wild card, where you never know what's going to happen until I'm out on the field playing. And then they kind of are like, wow. And it's kind of like when people get picked for dodgeball in school, they're like, you're the last one. But then that last person is always the best person playing. Yeah. And then it kind of makes you second guess. But it kind of goes with your story, is you never gave up. You had that mindset where you wanted to be on that starting lineup for that position, and you were going to do anything you could to get to that spot.
Right. And it was a lot of heartache. It was a lot of heartache. It was a lot of, dad to son conversations, sitting in the car after practice and feeling like it was never going to happen. And, him telling me don't give up, and feeling like, I don't know, they just don't think they're looking at me. And I was just like, really, I mean, these are huge lessons. And I think it came back to really help me later on in another hugely difficult field, which was the entertainment business.
Are you a person that uses like motivations as a key for your success? Like use those to keep your mind going forward to reach those goals?
Motivations in what way? What do you mean?
So like your dad, you had those conversations with your dad and how he was keep telling you, he was motivating you to not give up and stuff. And you used that to get the results that you wanted. But have you used that same situation throughout your career?
I have, and I think what's probably been helpful is that, all of us are, most people, we hate to reach out for help. We're going, I'm going to do it myself, and I kind of grew up in kind of a Midwesty, even though I lived in Southern California, it was kind of like living in the Midwest. So I was kind of like the farmer attitude, it's like pick up your big stuff and get out on the farm and start, working hard. And, you're only going to do it if you work hard. People aren't going to notice you until work hard. But so it was really hard to reach out. And later on, and I have had the ability to, I guess usually when I bottom out and realize I'm completely lost and I feel like a failure, I usually will reach out and go, I need help. I just need help. And it happened again in college. I decided at the last, I decided in my 4th year of college, I was almost ready to graduate and I decided I hated my major, but I was so deep into my major and I had taken a couple of acting classes for non-major. I was a PR major, but I took a couple of acting classes and I really liked it. And I went around the United States with some fraternity brothers. And on that trip, I decided I was going to be, I wanted to be an actor. And I said, but God, I can't start over in my major. I've been in college long enough. But I said, but you know what? I think I'll go one more year and I'll just dive into the theater department. And I did. And what had happened was I had got cast in a couple of these one-act plays, kind of randomly. Like I auditioned for one thing and I got cast in 2, and I didn't know how to act. And suddenly I was doing this play. I was rehearsing 2 one-acts at the same time. And I was completely lost. And one of them was this weird kind of comedy. And this other one was a play called Actors, which was about a guy trying to break through. He was given a big break and he was struggling. He was going to be fired. And so I was rehearsing that. And then the other one was this wacky comedy kind of thing. And I did the technical rehearsal for the wacky comedy one night. It was just a technical rehearsal and no one laughed.
Oh no.
And I go, oh my God, this is not funny. And my friend who was my roommate, he was working in the lights and stuff. And I said, I got to talk to you. After the rehearsal, I went outside and we talked in this car. And I said, this is terrible. This is a disaster. This is not funny. He goes, no, it's a technical rehearsal. Nobody laughs. It's just getting the cues. And I go, no. This is a comedy. Somebody has to have laughed somewhere in this thing and no one's laughing. And so I was having a freak out and he finally got me. It's so weird. He had gone through a self-awareness program like weeks before. Like this big LA, it was a very hip, like EST, I don't know if you know EST, but it's like those big awareness trainings back in the 70s. Anyway, he went to this training. He had been trying to get me to go to this thing. And I said, I don't really want to do that. But he ended up talking to me for 3 hours in my car and he realized, and he got me to a point where he said, what is it that you're really afraid of? And I said, what I was really afraid of was the audience and what they're going to think of me. And he goes, so how's that going to work if you go out on stage thinking about the audience? I go, it's probably not going to work. He goes, so what's the only thing you can do? And he goes, I guess the only thing I can do is think about my character only, just the character, just my scenario. And he goes, so that's my suggestion, just do that. So I got up the next day. I was going to do this. It was a 12 o'clock show in the afternoon. And I got up in the morning and I assumed the character from the moment I got up to the moment I walked on stage. I had to go to a couple of classes and I was the character in the class. And I didn't care. I was so not willing to fail. And I was the character in the class. I was all kind of very fastidious. And I was like this, because I was this taxidermist guy with glasses and all kind of very nervous, kind of Jack Lemony. And I swear to God, I went and the place was packed. My first scene was knocking on the door. You don't see me knocking on the door. I had so much intention behind the knock that when I knocked, the crowd laughed. And I like, and then of course I was immediately out of my experience. I was like, oh shit, that's the audience, they're laughing. And then of course I got back in the scene, but I just assumed character. Every time I thought about the audience, I put my will back to the character, and it was a hit. It was this hit show. And it was so weird because the other show, it was so weird. So simultaneously I'm doing this other show, which is about the actor who was going to get fired. And that's how basically I felt. I felt like I was going to get fired because everybody's going to realize that it was horrible. And so I had to have a breakthrough in this other play. It was a play called Actors by Conrad Bromberg. And I'll never forget, it was just a very dramatic, it was an off-Broadway play that was coming to Broadway. And it was emotional. I had to break down. I broke down and cried in the scene. I was like, I had a full experience with these two plays. And that's what kind of set me off into the world of acting.
So if you didn't go to your friend that was the lighting person, how do you think it would have played out differently?
Just like the technical rehearsal. And somebody would have probably said something nice. They'd go, oh, that was yes, good for you. Good for you. Good for you that you got up there. That's very brave.
That's not the response you wanted.
No, that's not the response. And I've gotten those.
Kind of shows that people, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people, like, even for advice, because you never know what a different point of view would be. So it's kind of nice that you reached out to him and he was able to help you in a way from those classes that he had taken.
And then, he made a deal with me. He said if I'm successful that I'd go through that program. And so he said, you got to go through the program. So I did. It was an amazing, these self-awareness programs are like from outer space. They're really, really bizarre. There's a movie called Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, and it's based on those trainings. They go and have this big training and come back very aware. Of course, nobody really wants to hear what they have to say, but.
So you talked about you were a PR major. Why did you pick PR at the time?
Because I reached out. Well, I didn't reach out. I was sat down. I was going to a place called Orange Coast Colleges in Newport Beach, near Newport Beach in California. And it was a 2-year college. And I was a film and TV major. Loved it. I got my general ed and all that stuff, but I was in the TV department all the time. We were doing shows. I was on the radio station. I mean, talking about, I was doing well in school. It's like my passion, right? I was really following my passion. And then I ran into a DJ who was a speaker at our class and was guest speaking or guest lecturing for a little bit. And he sat people down and had interviews with them because we were coming up at the end of our 2 years. And he totally talked me out of being a film and TV major in college because he was miserable as a DJ in Orange County, I guess. I don't know. He just thought there was no future in it. And he just goes, you got to get something you can fall back on. So don't be a film and TV major. You can always do that. Just do something else. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he probably knows. Yeah, he probably knows. And it was not the right thing. You got to follow. I tell people this all the time. Follow your bliss in college. I mean, look, back then college was not expensive, but now, you can spend $100,000 and you could be, an art major, and what are you going to do with your art major? I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying that you're spending $100,000 as for an art major or something like, or reading film and TV major or whatever. That's a lot of money to invest in something that may not pay anything. But again, I still go back to if you don't do something that you want to be there, that's going to make you want to go to school, you're going to drop out. You'll drop out. So
you're correct with the whole, we spend so much money nowadays on a piece of paper, but I'm not in the job that I'm in sports, which I went for. I was one of those people during college where I tried so many different things, and I was part of a fraternity and I learned philanthropy work. And so charity work, I did that for 3 years, coming up with events and stuff. And that was a fun thing for me. So I was just like, what could I do job-wise that I could use this experience and be able to still work and do what I can? My job now kind of does that. We do charity stuff, but it's doing events and planning all of that. So it's hard when you go to the college, you learn all that stuff, and then, well, I'm not using that right now, but times change now, so you never know what's going to happen. You could, like for you, you went through that route as a PR, but then you were like, I want to go back to what I enjoyed, and you found that passion, and you're able to continue on doing acting and TV and all that stuff.
Right. And I mean, the story is that a lot of people, unless you're like going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, a lot of times people go in for law school and they never become a lawyer. But, you know, look, a lot of times you don't end up doing what you do. But, you know, college is really about, I mean, just be passionate about what you're going for in college and follow your bliss that way, because then it's only going to lead to something. Maybe you decide to change after you get out of college, but you have gone for it in college and you've done the best you can, and you've stayed, now not stayed out of drudgery, but stayed because you wanted to. It's only going to be, you know, when you get out of college, you can do something else, but you've taken whatever tools you had. That there's a lot of stick-to-itiveness that has to go into college, and I think it pays off.
You talked about you joined a fraternity. Talk about that experience.
Bittersweet. I came out of JC with a 3.5 GPA, you know, Dean's List. I go into Fullerton. I'm a junior, so I have to go right into my upper division classes, and I get talked into joining this fraternity, and it turns out to be the big Animal House.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, I picked the wrong one. I mean, I have some fraternity brothers that are still, I went golfing with my fraternity brothers this last week. So nice. I'm still in touch with my fraternity brothers, but it was not a great move for me. The next semester I had a 1.7, got put on academic probation, and I struggled to get that 1.7. So it was like, cause I was like, it's really tough. I was 45 minutes away from school, which, cause I lived in Newport Beach and I was going to Fullerton, and they were always wanting us to go up there and party. So, you know, because you have to be with the brothers, and you got to be with the brothers, you got to bond. And back then it was really about that kind of thing. It's changed now to more philanthropy, which I wish it would have been when I was in there. But now it was more about partying. It was Animal House, and our house was Delta Chi, which was really like Delta House. And I laughed because the guy I went golfing with was, he was the first guy I saw coming through the doors of my fraternity. It was a big stairway that went up when you walked in the swinging doors to the stairway, and then swinging doors at the top of the stairway. And all of a sudden I heard a big loud scream, a bang, and the doors fly open, and there's a guy at the top, and he's laughing, and then he falls down the stairs to my feet, and he looks up at me, and he laughs, and he gets up and runs away. And I go, I like this fraternity. This sounds like a lot.
I would probably be, if I was in your situation, I'd be like, am I at the right house?
Yeah, I should have gone to SAEs. The SAEs wanted me, and they were much more, I guess, calm. But anyway, it was good. I did, once I got through that first semester, I got everything back on track. But I did become social chairman of our fraternity, and you know, and I enjoyed it. It was good, but I really had to get out of the party scene and move back into my college scene.
Yes, I know from my friends, they did the same thing. They joined, and then their GPA tanked, and it's like, come on, you're here for school. Like, I understand you're wanting to have fun, but you can do both at the same time. Like, my parents would have been so mad when I joined and then my grades would fall, because you're here for school. And I was the one that had to help them get their grades up and everything. But it's kind of like a bittersweet, like, was I too focused on school and not having fun? And I was the complete opposite. But I still talk to a core group of friends from there. And it kind of shows that you can get true friendships and bonds. And
you really do. You really do. You know, despite all that. And I came out and I was resentful. I really had some resentment because I thought it really, I thought it made me too much of a partier from then on. Mm-hmm. And then I became a bartender, and I partied a lot and partied, you know, so it was a lot of downside to that. But eventually at 28 years old, I gave up all the partying. So that was another huge breakthrough for me. And it's not, I don't talk about it much, but it is a magnificent breakthrough and turnaround for my life at 28. And I was in New York at the time. So this is a scoop. You've got the scoop here.
Yeah.
So I was in New York at the time, and I was living in LA. I graduated from college. I went to LA. LA didn't want me. They weren't ready for me in my acting career. I went back to Orange County. I learned how to bartend at a place called TGI Fridays. I learned how to throw bottles in the air and all that kind of stuff. I became the #1 bartender after another big struggle and a breakthrough. They were ready to fire me, but then all of a sudden I broke through, and I'm kind of a fourth quarter guy. So I broke through and I became the #1 bartender. And then I got this amazing opportunity to go to Paris, France, to open up the first American bar in Paris. And myself, another fraternity brother who got me the job at Fridays, and 2 other guys, and we flew to, or 1 other guy, and we flew to Paris and opened up this bar on the Champs-Elysees. Amazing, amazing experience. We had to teach them how to bartend. We had to teach ourselves how to learn French. We had to learn French. We had to count money. It was like so much incredible experience. And I did that for a year. And then after that, I was offered another job to stay there. But I thought, man, I'm 25. And I said, I really need to start my career. And I didn't want to go back to LA. So I decided to fly to New York. So I flew to New York. And I got into acting classes there and studied really hard. I studied with Uta Hagen eventually, who was really one of the big iconic acting teachers. She was in, for the youngsters out there, she was in the one with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Anyway, it wasn't Cleopatra, but it was, anyway, I'll think about it. She did a big role. She initiated the role on Broadway. Anyway, she was a big acting teacher. And I was really working hard to break through as an actor, and I'm trying to get work, trying to get an agent. And eventually I hit that wall. I came to that point in my time where I said, I'm either going to continue to party or I'm going to have to stop, because I can't do both. I cannot. It was funny, my grandmother had given me this book called How to Act in Commercials for Fun and Profit. And I read that book, and it said that if you have an audition, do not drink the night before. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, I can understand that. You know, all that. Well, suddenly I started getting a lot of auditions, and suddenly I was like, wait, I can't drink tonight either. I can't drink tonight either. I was like, it was backing up on me. And finally, I reached a point in my life where I go, I've got to make a decision. So I made that decision to stop drinking, and I never drank again. So I have not drank since I was 28 years old. And really, after doing that, I was able to really put my focus in my career and become and grow up and start getting work. It was amazing how that worked. That I started to I made a huge choice in my life, a big change, and it paid off because I started working, and I really didn't stop for a long time.
I think something with the show that I do is we talk about challenges and obstacles that we have to face, and how, in your example, drinking was a big challenge, and you kind of had that decision. Do I continue that lifestyle and not get the work that I want, or do I have to look what's best for me and my career and make that sacrifice? And you saying that today you still haven't done it, it shows that you made that promise to yourself, and you're continuing getting the work that you're proud to have gotten, that you probably wouldn't have gotten if you were going through that lifestyle still.
Well, I wouldn't have a family. I wouldn't have kids. I wouldn't be married. You know, I wouldn't be able to be self-supporting through my own contributions. You know, it could have gone all wrong. It really could have, but that was a huge move. A lot of people didn't understand it, you know, because you don't realize, you know, it's like, oh, I must be the weirdo. Well, the only reason why I'm the weirdo because all the people I know are partiers. So then when you stop partying, you actually meet other people who are not. And but I couldn't do it. Some people can. So I'm just telling you, I mean, I'm not judging anybody. Some people can. I just couldn't. I always say that God gave me a bag of drinking tokens, and I used them all by 28. So I was out of tokens.
So one of the iconic shows that you were known for is Legends of the Hidden Temple, which is still showing today on think Pluto TV, I think I saw it. Talk about how that opportunity came about.
Well, it's part of this whole journey after, New York and really 28 years old. Really, I started working, and mostly I did commercials. I really, I thought I wanted to be a film actor and a TV actor, but it just never seemed, I couldn't seem to get any traction there. But oddly enough, the very first commercial I ever went out on, I booked. It was a national commercial, very first audition. So I'm like, oh, this is my path. So I decided to move to New York. From New York to LA just to try it and to see pilot season. I wanted to see if I could get some pilots. I got a really good agent, and I was going out for a lot of things. I think I even went up for Friends at that point. There was a lot of that. I was up for Cheers. I was up for all these shows, and but I couldn't book.
Could you imagine if you were on Friends, how big of an impact that would have made on your life?
Exactly. But Chandler got the job.
We're getting the scoop now on the show.
Yeah, see, that was it. That was the part I was going for, right?
Wow.
Joey used to go. What I can't say the character's name. What's his name?
Matt LeBlanc.
Matt LeBlanc. Yeah, he was one of those really hot commercial actors in New York at the time too. I remember you go there and I go, God, why does his hair look so good? I go, I'd be in the office, his hair looks so good. His jeans are like perfectly ripped. I'm like, I just don't seem like I'm quite hip like him, but that wasn't my career path. But so I tried for that, but I started booking more and more commercials. And at the same time, when I had stopped drinking, I actually started writing a movie, and it was sort of semi-autobiographical, but it was a coming of age movie. And I stayed with that, and I had a filmmaker friend who helped me. We would write it together. And so when I came to LA, I actually got a writing fellowship. I won a writing fellowship for Amblin Entertainment through Steven Spielberg. So I was working in the Universal lot. I was booking like 6 or 7 commercials a year, which was enough. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call. This is what happens when things get hot, right? All of a sudden, out of the blue, they find me out of the players directory, which was a book that you used to pay to get into. They'd sit and look for pictures, headshots. And that's how they would pick people sometimes. And I got picked out of that. And they had me come in for an audition. And all I had to do was the play-by-play for the Temple Run, which I had no idea what a Temple Run was. But I had done some previous practice with my brother doing play-by-play on sports with football games, 5 to the 10, the 15, 20 picks, another tackle, the 30, 35. He's going to make it all. He's going all the way, touchdown. So I just used that in my Temple Run, and they go, wow, he really did. So probably nobody else could do that. And so they booked me like 2 weeks later, and I got flown up to Orlando.
I mean, your touchdown reaction just now is like literally your reaction every time a kid crosses the finish line. Or
he did it! He did it! Oh my God, he did it! Yes.
I mean, anytime you're watching, you're so excited. You're going to space camp. Let's go.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, and that was not fake stuff. We're pulling for those kids out there too. And I want them to break through, and they're, it's such a challenge show. That show is really life, and we're all pulling for them to get through it. And I remember when they make it, man, my hair would stand up on my arms. And sometimes, occasionally, if you knew the backstory on some of these kids, you'd start crying a little bit too, because they made it through, and they're so shocked that they made it through, and they can't believe they made it through, because it is kind of a miracle, and it all comes kind of out of the blue, because you don't think you're going to make it, and suddenly you do. And I said, isn't that life?
What were your initial thoughts of the concept of the show when you first started? Were you into it, or were you kind of like hesitant on how people would react to it?
I thought it was extremely hard to understand. When they brought me out there, they did not know the show. They had not done a pilot. They were making it up on their way. Now, they were fully in production. They were building the sets for the Temple games, for the moat, for all that stuff for the Temple. They had all these crews going. They brought me out. They handed me a script of legends. Basically, they handed me a script of legends. That's all I got. I'm like, so how do you do the game show with the legends? I'm like, I didn't really understand how this thing was going to do, how this thing was going to play out. And, you know, and we were so late getting it up that there wasn't really any time to understand what is the mode about? And like, what exactly did they do? And oh, the legend doesn't play into that. Okay, but then it does play into the steps of knowledge. And that, you know, you're just trying to figure it out. And nobody really was so busy. Nobody really had time to explain it to me. And I was really a fish out of water. I was way over my, it was way above my pay grade. It was terrible. And they were, I think they were very scared when I started doing the show, because they realized they found a guy. I had never hosted a show before. I wasn't Mark Summers. You know, I was a guy who just done commercials, and they brought me in to do this show. And I thought this was probably the hardest show that's ever put on Nickelodeon. And so the one good thing they did was they gave me a bunch of tapes of a previous show they had done with a guy named, I forget the name of it, who it was, but he had done a number of their game shows. And he was really good. And they gave me a bunch of tapes, and I go, oh, okay, I could see his energy. You know, he was kind of like me a little bit. He was a little different, but he had the energy. It was go, moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. There's no looking back. It's moving forward, you know. And I just watched that, and I came out after watching those, and I was a little bit better, but they were still worried about me.
I will say, as a viewer, it was fast. Like, you go from one game to the next, to the next, to the next. So it's like you said, none of us really know what the mode is. It's just a bunch of kids crossing water, and okay, what's next? Like, and then the steps of knowledge. Okay, now we're learning more. Were the artifacts fake and like a make-up artifact, or were they actual artifacts for that? Like, I don't know. I can't.
Well, like God, what would be one of the artifacts? They're all kind of blurred in together.
There was a necklace. I can't even think of what they are.
Whatever, the necklace of Pocahontas or something like that. Well, they would make it, you know. They would make the necklace of Pocahontas, and then they would put it and hide it in the temple. You know, maybe hanging around the Shrine of the Silver Monkey or something like that. I don't know. I don't think it hung anything around the Shrine of the Silver Monkey. That was its own thing.
That room is just fun to watch those kids try and do.
My favorite one was the bucket that used to raise. You get in the bucket and it would raise you up into the shrine, and then you break.
Oh, yeah.
I like that one a lot.
Did you have to test out each of the games so you had more knowledge of, for like when you were doing play-by-play, you were able to talk about it better?
Yes, I did. I had to go walk through it myself so I could see it. I mean, the kids had to walk through it too. They got a tour of it because they had to show where all the actuators were to open the doors, and else they would have never gotten past the ledge, you know, the ledges or whatever. And so they got their own tour of it. But by then it was like, you know, it's 12 hours into the day. They're shot. Yeah. And they're like, what? But I had to learn everything that was going on because they changed every 5 shows, they changed the rooms around. So I'd have to learn the new room so I could follow them and see what they're going to do. The good news is that at the end of the season, I would go in LA, I would go into the post-production, and I was able to re-record some of my temple runs. Okay.
Because that would be hard. Because did you have to walk like where the child was, walk through where they are at, or did you stay at the front?
Yeah, you start here, and because it was like it was like that. So I'd walk here and I just kind of arch around to the end and then come back because they had to come back. So I'd follow them. We all followed them. All the producers, everybody. We're all screaming and yelling the whole time.
A lot of people have talked about that the temple guards were scary for those kids. Like, it terrified them in a way. Did you have to interact with them as much when you were doing like test runs?
Yeah, I had to interact with them because they were my producers, and we had many, many conversations about problems that we're having off the set with my performance. No, they were, most of them were all the guys that were doing the moat crossing, all those safari guys. They all got to be the temple guards after in the temple run. But occasionally the producers would dress up, and they would get to be the temple guard. They're very frightening. It was no faking that. You're in a small space. You got a helmet on. You got a mouthpiece in. You're thinking about where in the hell you are. And how are you going to get over to wherever that is? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this thing pops out. So that just scares the hell out of you. That's a haunted house, you know?
Yeah.
It basically is.
With only millions of people watching them going through that temple.
Yeah.
Talk about the challenge of the production, like creating an episode. What was it like creating one episode or like a whole season? How did it happen?
Well, the first season was, so the first show, it took us about, I want to think it took us like 16, 17 hours to do one show.
Wow.
That's all we did was one show. And we had a lot of breakdowns. It was like a Disney ride. It would break down, you know. So we'd have to stop. We'd have to reset. We have to put them exactly in that spot, see where they were doing, see where they're going, you know, and then start them again, start the clock again. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of stuff where a lot of people couldn't get across the moat. So we had to, like, you know, sort of help them, because otherwise we're going to spend 30 minutes trying to get across the moat, you know, because sometimes the moat crossings were really difficult. So it was a lot of challenges that way. The favorite part was the question and answer, because that was kind of a place where I could kind of rest.
Mm-hmm.
And the first season, I believe, I actually do the legend too. I actually talk about the legend, which I'm like so exhausted by the time doing everything. But they finally gave it to Olmec, and that was a time for me to kind of rest in these steps of knowledge. Correct. Continue. Step down. One more. Almost there. You're one step away from the Temple Games. Yeah.
How did you keep yourself focused during those times?
First season, I don't know if I had focus. It was like a dream. The first season was so surreal, and to be honest with you, I was completely insecure. The first season, I really was above my pay grade. I was really fish out of water. I was very insecure. I really didn't think they were going to have me back the next year. And I didn't really care, because I was so exhausted after the first season. And I realized, oh, I'm not getting enough money for this. But I got home, and they were talking about whether or not, they didn't know if they were going to bring me back or not. And I seriously said, I don't care. I said, this was really hard, and I don't think I'm being set up for success. So I wrote a list of things that I needed, and it probably looked like a prima donna doing it, but I wrote a list. I said, and I went in for an interview. Another scoop here. I went in for an interview they were going to talk to me about re-upping, and they were like saying, you've got to be better. You know, it was sort of like that kind of a conversation. And I was like, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I do need to be better. And I said, I have a list of things that I think can make me better. So I wrote down stuff, and one of them was, please give me an assistant that stays by my side, that keeps me informed of everything that's going on in the show, because we're doing 5 shows concurrently. So I need to know how this all works continuity-wise, so I can wrap and I can extemporaneously speak about things that are happening, not just because, you know, I go to the Temple Games, and then I have no clue what they did. They'd come up to me and go, so in the moat, they fell, and they were like the last person to cross, you know, or something like that. Or in the Temple Games, they were the last person to do that. So I was able to kind of weave those things in. Plus, they would also keep score during the Temple Games and send me and put up a little flashcard saying that team won or something like that, and they would show the score. So that was a lot of my stopping during the first season. I had to stop. I go, I don't know what the score is. I don't know how this game's ending. I don't know what's happening. So I had somebody helping me with that. That was really, really helpful. Plus, we got a really good director. The second season, he was a MTV director, and he ended up going on to do a lot of the like the Emmys and Academy Awards and stuff like that. He was so good. And I talked to him. This was one of those things where I was scared to death that season. I thought everybody hated me going into that second season. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm here. And I went right to him. I got off the airplane, got to the set, I went right to him, and I said, let me tell you something. Here's what I think you've been probably hearing about me. And I said, this, and that. I go, so here's what I think, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, dude, you and I are going to have a great season.
Wow.
Yeah.
So would you say the big difference, like The director first season was like he wanted to do it his way.
No, the director was the friend of the producers, good guy, but he was a technical director. He was not a creative director.
Okay.
You know, and he was buried, by the way. He was probably like me. Well, he didn't get invited back. So he did get fired, but he was a good guy, but he was really difficult. So he was probably buried in the technical room and not being able to get out. And he never gave me any direction at all. My guy was just like, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he wanted. He knew his shots. He knew the tone. He knew everything. He was fun. You know, he was really fun. And we had another director, a producer on the set too, who was a goofball. And he made it really fun for me because it's got to be a goofball environment. Everybody's got to be laughing and having a good time. So David Greenfield was his name. He was great.
Definitely with those kind of shows. I mean, you compared to Mark Summers. I mean, we think Double Dare was that strict? Like they let them have fun and enjoy the experience. And I think looking at the seasons, each season, I think you felt more confident in what you were doing from like your tone and how you were reacting to stuff. What's the biggest thing you learned about yourself from the first season to the last season?
Well, I think that's kind of what we were talking about is that, you know, again, I sort of the theme of, you know, kind of in the fourth quarter, I'm always kind of down. I'm always, it seemed, my brother, he said this to me one time. He says, you know, he goes, when you do something, he goes, you really struggle. And he goes, and you really have a hard time doing it. But once you get it, he goes, man, you never forget it. And you're like, it's locked in, but it's really trouble getting there. And that's for me. And I think just because I get insecure, you know, I think about the audience too much. And I get worried about that. I worry about my audience, and it's usually, I have to get kicked in the head usually. And it would happen in football too. I'd be in a football game and I'd be I'd be kind of not really fully involved, and somebody would hit me really hard, and all of a sudden I get pissed. Now I'm pissed, and now I'm out of my mind. So I think that's what happens a lot.
Did you have a good relationship with, I think it was D. Bradley Baker, Olmec?
Yeah, he's a great guy. He was great. He was another funny ass guy on set. Once we got to know each other, I think after the first season, I mean, he was so funny. He'd do little voiceover stuff, or voice characters. He could do a dinosaur, like physically do the dinosaur and make the noise really well. And I used to bring him out to the audience because make the audience see the dinosaur. So I'd go out there and mess around with him, do that. And I was always encouraging him to do it. And I am single-handedly responsible for him coming to LA and starting that magnificent voiceover career of his, because I told him, you, my friend, have to get out of Orlando. And you're going to have to come to LA and do that. So he did. He came out, he took me up on it, came to my house. He stayed in my house for a few weeks and got his feet underneath him and got his bearings and started working. Never stopped working.
Wow. Do you have a favorite moment from doing that show? Or a favorite memory?
Favorite memory of that show? It's probably, my favorite memory is probably, it relates back to the bartending thing. When I was almost fired as a bartender because I was terrible. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do all this stuff. I couldn't multitask. And I'm like having a horrible time. And then suddenly I had a breakthrough, and suddenly everything started clicking. And one night I was like sitting at the bar going, man, I really know what I'm doing, you know? And that's how it felt on that set. It was like, well, from that moment, that first season where I was just swimming underwater and walking through mud or whatever the case may be, to the second season of just going, wow, I really know what I'm doing and I'm having fun. And I can actually say extra things and do extra, I can start to improvise a little bit. Can't do too much of that show because it drives forward, but I was just having a great time. And I just remember that going, now I'm having a great time.
It kind of goes back to what we talked about with being passionate about what you're doing. Kind of the first season, you're like, I'm not liking this. But then right when you got to the second, I think third, you kind of were like, I like what I'm doing, and you got to enjoy it. It's not stressful. I mean, it probably was stressful with the long hours, but you were enjoying the opportunity that you had.
Yeah. I mean, we get fired. Everybody's going to get fired from a job and get let go. It just happens, whatever. I mean, I got my very first job I ever had coming out of college. When I went to LA and they said the door was closed for me, I worked at a casting director's office. I thought, hey, great, I'll work at a casting director because that'll get me in the back door to be an actor, that kind of stuff. And it wasn't. It was a freaking hard job to be a casting assistant, and it was a lot of hours, and it was really hard, and I didn't know how to be a secretary very well, and I got fired. And it was awful, and I'd never been fired for in my life, and I thought, you're fired. This is amazing. She fired me, and she had paid she paid on Monday for the whole week. So I'd already been paid for the whole week. Well, I'm a good, honest guy, and so she fired me on Monday. And so I said, you've already paid me. Like, what do you want me to do? Do I work? And then she made the big mistake. She goes, well, you can do whatever you want. I go, oh, okay, well, I'll work the rest of the week. And she probably wanted me to get her my stuff and leave at that moment. And actually, it was so funny because, again, that week was probably the best week I ever had in that office because I was relaxed because I already got fired.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ways to go but, up.
You could have done anything that week.
I did, and she stayed in her room the whole time. She wouldn't come out. She felt so bad. And all the other casting associates, the assistant or the other casting directors, they were loving it. She wasn't a very nice person, but they were loving it. And they're going, you are killing her right now. Absolutely killing her.
The comedian side coming out. So the show kind of relaunched with a movie, and then there's possible talks of remakes. Did you have any involvements with those, or you're kind of just, if they asked me, they asked me?
The remake, we did the movie, which came out of the blue. I'm like, I thought somebody was having a joke with me. Like, oh, you're gonna make a movie of the game show? Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Why don't you send me a script? Let me take a look. And they send me a script, and I go, oh, it is a movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, and it looked like it was being done by Nickelodeon. I was like, wow, they're really doing this, and I had a blast doing it. I didn't have a lot of scenes in it, but they had me there for all of the promotion stuff. So I got to go and do the Comic-Cons in New York and in San Diego, and I got to go up to Vancouver and do a lot of press junket stuff. I had a blast doing that. I got to hang out with the PR person, which was like being a PR person. I finally got to use my PR skills, and that was cool. And I had a great time, and then the movie got mismarketed a little bit and misrepped, I think. They made it for little kids who had no idea what Legends of the Hidden Temple was. And so, but I was promoting to all these people like your age, but nobody was watching the childish version of Legends of the Hidden Temple. So yeah. I don't mean this in a bad way. I don't mean this to be, degrading this thing, but they did a nice job with the movie, but they made it for kids, and the kids didn't really know. They had no frame of reference for the show.
I think a lot of people that I ask that's my age, they've never heard of the show before. Like I found it on TV, like I think early 2000s. It was on Nick Gas or something. Yeah. And so they showed the repeat, and I got into it. So I was just like following, but it was a hit or miss for my generation. But anytime I talk to like coworkers that were older, they're like, oh yeah, I know that show, because it was probably when they were children.
Right.
So, and I think it kind of goes with that where I heard that there was a movie. I just didn't know when it was released or anything.
Right.
So
now Quibi's come out with this new thing, and I don't know what's going to happen with Quibi. It seems, I don't know if that's going away or what's happening with that. It seems it kind of launched kind of the wrong time, and
yeah,
the whole thing. So I'm not sure what's happening, but it looks like they were going for Legends with older kids on it. Of course, nobody contacted me, so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be in this, which I don't think is correct if I'm looking with my producer hat on, because I'm going, wait, I'm the guy who connects to that generation. You go to my fraternity now, I am a hit with all the kids, all 25, or at least that age group. Everybody knows who I am. But I said, they haven't contacted me, but I don't know. Maybe the show's not going to go. I don't know. Hard to say, but.
So
They should bring the show out. They're putting it on Netflix. They should just do a new version of Legends of the Hidden Temple and put it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Or Hulu or something.
Something where it's like they can reach a bunch of people. And Netflix and Hulu seems like a lot of the movies nowadays that were going to be in theaters are now going to Netflix or Hulu because everyone has a streaming service now.
Yeah, the world has changed, right?
Yes.
In that sense, the entertainment business. I mean, are anybody going back to the movie theaters?
I haven't been to a movie theater in probably like 5 years.
Exactly. Even before that, because look, back when I was growing up, it was cheap to go to movies. I could go on a date and I could go dinner, which was cheap. I had a car with some gas, and I'd go to a movie and I'd be out for a very low amount of money. I mean, geez, you go to a movie, you're in for $100.
Yeah.
By the end of the night.
It's too big of a budget right there.
You better really like that person, or they better like you a lot.
See, I'm a person, I don't go to movies on a date. It's like, I want to talk to the person. I don't want to sit there for an hour and 30 minutes and not talk.
No, I know there is that, but not everybody's gregarious,
Yeah. So after that show, were you getting a lot more auditions or jobs, or was it kind of like slowing down because you went in a different direction?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Nobody really knew me. I was basically, after that show, I went back to my normal life, and going back to commercials. Nobody knew who I was. It wasn't really until later, till the directors got older or younger, they got into the scene. People started getting in the scene. They started to know who I was. And I'm not sure, sometimes, I mean, I know I was brought in for a lot of auditions just so they could say hello.
Mm-hmm.
Which was fine, but it's also like I just spent 2.5 hours preparing to come down for this, and I have a feeling it was just to sign an autograph.
That's not fun because it wastes your time. Because you're like, this is my career. I want to get an offer possibly out of this.
Exactly. But look, it just happens.
So how did you get involved in real estate?
Necessity is the mother of invention. So it was 2000. I had just been married. The entertainment business, the commercial business went on strike. And coincidentally, every commercial that I had stopped running just before that strike.
Oh no.
So suddenly I finished, like my commercials are gone. We went on strike. I'm like, oh, I have no money. I have no money coming in. So I thought, I got to do something. So I went, reached out. I like this. It's all part of the theme here. So I took my brother-in-law and my best friend out to lunch separately. And I said, here's where I'm at. What do you think? What would you do? What do you like to do? I was like, and they started talking to me, and both of them separately sort of mentioned real estate. And I had sort of liked real estate, and I had bought a couple of things. And I said, yeah, maybe I'll do that. And they said, hey, if you find anything that's interesting to go in on, we'll go in on with you. So I immediately got in my car and drove around LA, and I found an apartment building, and it was a sign laying in the dirt. And I pulled it up, got the phone number, and called it. And it took me like 6 months to book the deal. And I was almost ready to leave. I was going to leave LA too. I decided to move to Vermont. I said, well, I can do anything. I have no career. I have no money coming in. I could start completely fresh. So I went to Vermont during the escrow to see if I wanted to live in Vermont or New Hampshire. And I came back and I go, there's no work in Vermont and New Hampshire. So I came back and closed the deal, and I rehabbed and remodeled this 6-unit apartment building, and that's what started me. And then I started to do a triplex, and then I bought a mountain cabin, and I started just picking things, and then eventually I did a movie. I don't know if you saw that in any of the thing. I did a movie called Distortion, and it was my big movie. I wrote it, and I directed it, and I acted in it. Probably shouldn't have done all three, but I did it, and we ended up selling it, and we did fairly well. I mean, we didn't do fairly. We got some money back on it, but I did it. But one of the guys I cast in the movie played a cop, and he was a house flipper. And he'd known that I was doing a little work, had done some work previous to that, because I had made some, that's how I made my money to make the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, do you want to build a house with me? And I go, yeah, I don't know how to build a house. So right after that, I built a house with him for a year. And that's how I learned how to build houses. And that's what started me on my career.
Wow. I mean, real estate or house flipping is kind of like a thing now. Like a lot of people are getting into because the investment is worth it at the end.
Yeah, but it's risky, you know.
Yeah.
It's risky, and you know, don't let anybody tell you that you can't lose any money in real estate. You can.
Before I get out there and go start buying a house, I'm gonna be like, Kirk Fogg told me to.
Yeah, no. You gotta be careful. It's like it's 4-act play. You gotta buy it right, you gotta design it right, you gotta build it right, and you gotta sell it right. If one of those doesn't work, you gotta stop.
Knowing me, it would take me a while to get used to it. My dad used to do like granites or like kitchens and bathrooms. My family.
Oh, he did? He was a remodeler?
Yeah, he did all that. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of this stuff is.
Right, yeah. Well, I don't either.
So how did you learn before you met the guy that was a house flipper, did you kind of do research and learn how to do it? Or
no, well, I had done it. Because I had remodeled the apartments. And then I bought a triplex and I remodeled the triplex. So, and then I bought a little mountain cabin. I remodeled that. So yeah, I had some people, I kind of knew how to do it. So, but I didn't know how to build,
mm-hmm.
you know, like I didn't know how to from the ground up, which is a whole different deal. So once I did that, then I was able to go out on my own.
So what does the future look like for you professionally and personally?
I don't know. I don't really know. It's such, we're here in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
You have to mention the pandemic.
Yeah, we can't say the other word.
I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe this is just a new time to sort of break through again. I would like to say that I'm broken through. This is the most amazing time. I have really come to many, many decisions about my life, but I haven't. And, I'm just kind of taking it a day at a time, and I'm trying to take care of, what's in front of me. I mean, that's all I can do. And I'm kind of in between inspiration, and it's okay. Some days it's not okay, but it is okay. And, but I just I try to keep my brain right, and I try not to freak out too much, and I try not to look at the news too much.
Yeah.
Right now I have a house here in LA. It's a pretty big house. And so I am remodeling that. I can't help myself. So I've got a whole crew outside of my exterior. We're all redoing. I bought this house. It's a great house. And it was actually great because I'm a TV junkie. It was Jethro Bodine, the guy from Beverly Hillbillies. It was his old house back in the 50s. And it's up in the hills. Max Baer Jr. And it's a nice big house up here, but it's old. And so I've started to work on it because I'm in between projects. So I decided to do that. So we'll see.
I think this pandemic it's a great time to kind of do like a self-reflection and kind of think, what goals do you have in life? I experienced the furlough, my position. So I was like, I don't know what to do for the next few months. And this podcast has always been a goal. And I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity to do it. I have the time. I have the resources, and I had to learn on the fly. I didn't know anyone but I was always listening to podcasts, and it's been the best experience ever. Even my coworkers, they listen to every episode, and they're still.
Oh, that's good.
So
yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh, are they going to like that I'm doing this? But when they see the passion that I have and reaching out to all these people, it's a great way to connect and be able to learn more. And I truly have enjoyed learning from you. Like, I've been getting the scoop. I'm getting new stuff that maybe people haven't heard about you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And believe me, I've been interviewed a lot. So I've given you a little bit of tidbit. But yeah, I like that. It's like, I've been thinking, so I've reflected. In this pandemic, I've reflected. And now I'm ready. And then I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. We have to keep going back down. So
It's always like each interview I do, I've learned something about myself and what I can use in my daily life, or something that I can think, okay, I can do it differently. Because we're all not 100% perfect. We all can learn from each other one way or another. And it's kind of like, I enjoy that. So
well, I like this, when I asked you, I said, so what is it we're going, what path are we going to go down? So I really did enjoy the idea that we were going to go down this path about breakthrough, because really the breakthrough thing has been the theme of my whole life. It really has. And it keeps me, excited. And even though I have no clues to where I'm heading right now, I'm a little bit lost. I'm in the middle of the temple and I don't know what the next room is. I don't know where the next room is, but I'm just going to keep moving forward. And, something that I've learned, and this has been the greatest thing, is progress, not perfection.
mm-hmm.
Progress, not perfection.
Take it to the temple run. You're basically in the pit of despair, and you don't know if you want to go down to the bottom room, the middle room, or the up room, and you just are hitting that button. See, like, does that door open? Nope. Now you got to try a different route.
Yeah, I just want to grab. All I really want to do is grab the object and get out within 3 minutes. I'm trying desperately to find that object so I can get the hell out of that temple.
This might be a crazy question with the temple. Has there ever been a kid where they're like in a room, they just want to jump out of it and just walk to the next one and go around instead of going actually through the doors?
That's like the Kobayashi Maru test, like Captain Kirk, the only one who went around the Kobayashi Maru test. That would have been genius. No, but there has been kids that have gotten scared out of the temple.
I remember, I think there's seen an episode where I think it's like the final child going in and they just jump out. I'm like, that would probably be me.
Yeah, they broke the fourth wall.
Oh, now every TV show does that.
Yeah.
So the final couple questions. In the industry that you're in, either real estate or the entertainment industry, what tips or advice would you give someone to pursue that and accomplish their goals in that industry?
The entertainment business, what a tough business that one is. I don't know, look, when I started it, I wanted to be a movie star. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make lots of money. I wanted to be a movie star, and I wanted to have a Jaguar, and I wanted to have a house, a big, beautiful house. But, once you get into the business, you have to figure out what the business is. The money of the business has changed. Now, look, I've never been I've not made huge money in this business. I'm just a journeyman actor, really. But so you're really probably not getting in for the money, even though I didn't think that when I got in. So if I thought that when going in, I might not have gone into the business. So you have to be sort of insane to make a decision to go in the acting business and think, oh, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to make the money. I'm the special guy. But then you realize when you come to LA or New York, you realize that everybody who's in that city trying to do it are all the best people from their little town. The ones that said, dude, you would be so good in commercials. You'd be so good on TV show. Really, you think so? Yes, you should go to New York, And so I was with all these people, and that's what you're competing with all the time. And there's always somebody who's better than you, always. And you'll see that in sports too. There's always somebody better every time.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter. You don't need to be the best to succeed. It's kind of random. But the deal is just to try to be smart, try to figure out how you fit into the business, try not to sabotage yourself and do things. Maybe you're doing the business for a different reason. Maybe you're doing it because you're trying to figure out who you are, and then you need to figure that out and then get out of the business. Or if you really want to do the business, you just have to figure out how to make money in the business. And I don't really know how to make money in this business. The business model is changing. It changes a lot, and probably you got to be the top. You got to be one of the best. If you want to do it, and if you're not, you're going to make a little bit of money, maybe, but I don't know. That's a tough question.
The final
And,
question.
and even if you make money early, you may not have that money later.
That is true. Yeah.
And just think if you were successful, this is difficult. I can imagine people who were very successful in series, and then it's over, and then they can't work anymore, but now they're only known as blah, blah, blah. And they don't have some big residual thing like a Seinfeld, that's floating their boat the whole time. So then they got to figure out can they go back to the restaurant business? They can't.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what are you doing here? So what a tough gig that is. Me, myself, I can always just sort of fade into and do whatever I want because nobody really puts two and two. So I've been sort of living anonymity in some ways.
I think some people, when I was back the time I was graduating, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to make 6 figures. I'm going to get this awesome job and everything. And it's like, I don't need that 6 figures right away. I want to earn it. I want to work up to it. Like I want to challenge myself to get to that goal eventually. And I know that some people that I know, money is not a strong suit for them. They like to spend it. They don't know how to save. And I was like the opposite. I'm like, I want to save as much as I can because you never know what's going to happen. And kind of helps me because I'm always like, okay, I can only spend this much this week. What's my monthly expenses? I probably overdo it, but it helps.
No, I'm telling you, that is, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this man over there.
Whichever way it's shown.
Listen to this man because he's absolutely correct. They don't teach money in school. They don't teach it in college. They don't teach it anywhere. And I'm right now spending time with my son who just graduated from high school, and we're reading a book about money. It's called Money Matters. And we're reading this book and we're learning about money because I said, look, you don't want to have to learn this after college. We want to start learning about money now.
Yep.
And about not debting, not getting yourself into debt, in which all these students do, and all these people going off college, getting into debt, and they get credit cards and all that kind of stuff. You got to know how to make a spending plan. You have to know how to keep generating revenue. I always tell people, what do I need to do? Just keep generating revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Keep generating revenue and try to make more money than you spend.
They need to teach that in college. I remember
in high school,
I took a class called personal finance. So they talked about, okay, what's a check? What's a credit card? What's a debit card? But then after that, it's like, okay, do I remember everything that I just learned like 5 years ago? But they need to do more like life skills stuff in college in a way. That's, I think, or you're going to have to learn it the hard way. I mean,
or you're going to have to be in that horrible 22 to 26 range, where you're like, oh my God, I'm shot. I have so much money in debt. I can't, I'm moving into another new apartment. It's like on and on and on. Yeah.
See, for me, I was like, I told my parents, I'm like, I think I'm ready to be on my own. And I've been living by myself in my own house for 2 years now. And my mom's like, you're fine. Like I learned, like I was the one cooking at home. I was doing laundry and all that. So I was learning those life skills right away because I knew I can't.
You're self-supporting through your own contributions.
Yes. So the final question I have for you, from your journey, what tips or advice would you give to rise to the challenge, to overcome obstacles and accomplish your goals?
Try to be honest with yourself. Try to, if something's holding you back, try to get in touch with it. Try to slow down. Try to get yourself to stop and think and see what it is that you need to do. And if you don't know, ask a few people and say, how do you think I'm doing? What do you think? Because, we get off in these roles, man, and we never stop. And we just think, oh, no, I just got to keep going, But it's okay. It's okay to stop and get some feedback and find out what it is you need to work on, because it could be, it could be some huge defect that you need to deal with. Like for me, mine was my drinking, at 28. That's where I had to come to Jesus moment and sit there and go, what am I committed to? And then how do I do it?
I think from your experience, I've gone through the same thing I'm a type 1 diabetic, and for going on 15 years now. And I was one of those things where I knew what I was doing. Oh, I knew I was right. But over time, it caught up to me. And it's kind of scared some of my coworkers where they've had to come to my house because they thought, oh, he's not making a sentence on the phone. And I reached out to someone. I actually did an interview with someone, and him and I just continue to talk and communicate. And it's kind of like I felt better about myself reflecting and talking to someone. And it gave me more confidence to be upfront, be honest with myself, and know that there's always people out there that will help you. Even like your true friends. Your true friends are going to be there to support you no matter what, and you can't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. But you got to find the friends that are willing to tell you the truth.
Yes.
Because some are just going to co-sign your BS. No, you're great. You're perfect. Keep going. Oh, no. Why? You're just being hard on yourself. I'm like,
I am.
No, I got to make a change.
Well, Kirk, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and telling your rise to the challenge. It's been an honor to learn more about your story, and I'm excited for everyone to hear more about it.
Thank you, and good luck to you. And I wish you the best, and I think that you're right on the right path too. You are heading for the gates.